Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I decided today I'm going to start doing some work just in terms of helping you understand keys and where they come from. We talk about keys a lot in music. There's a C major key, there's D, there's B flat, there's A flat, and they all have different amounts of sharps and flats in them. So how do you know what happens? How do you know what happens? Well, how do they get there? How does the key of G have a one sharp and it happens to be an F sharp? I had somebody come to me and show me some music the other day and said, well, I think you'll be able to play this, Pat. It's in the key of F sharp. And I looked and there was an F sharp there. And I says, well, this is real simple. It's in the key of G. What do you mean G? There's an F sharp. Well, that F sharp puts it in the key of G. He says, you know, I don't understand music at all. But I'm going to show you how that works out all right. It turns out, and I want to show you this chart. I'm not going to spend any time with it, and you can't really focus on it very well, and that's all right. I just want to show you the number of sharps and flats that you can get in a key. And this is basically sharps, but anyway, here's your some flats, but usually sharps. This is the key of F. The key of F starts on F. That's the root note. It has one flat. The key of E, and just kind of don't worry about being able to focus on it. I don't think you'll be able to. 4 sharps for the key of E, and it starts on the key on E. That makes that E what's called the root note. This is E flat, and there are 3 flats, and E flat is the first note. That's the root note. D has 2 sharps. C, which I always use, I'll use a lot, is actually no sharps and no flats. How did it get to be that way? Well, I'm going to be showing you. Then there's B flat, which has 2 flats, and B flat is the root note. Then A, which has 3 sharps and starts on that low A. Recorders can't get down that low. Very few instruments, woodwinds usually get down to the C and no loggers. That's below what most woodwinds can do. G is actually, we would start on this G right here. That has 1 sharp. Then you have the key of B with 5 sharps, the key of F with 6 sharps. The F sharp is like 7 sharps. A lot of sharps and a lot of flats. Now, what can recorders do? Recorders do well in the key of C, D, G, and B flat. That's quite a few. That's 4 keys, and I've been able to do E flat and so forth, and F and some of those other keys. But most people they're limited in terms of how many they can do. But I've been able to squeak out some extra ones because I use alternate fingerings and all of that I've devised. So I want to show you there's a pattern. And I want to start off, I'm going to take this down. We won't use it again. I just want to show you what some of the keys are. And I want to show you this. This is a more important chart. And it will show you when Rick gets it set up here. I'll be able to show you where the keys come from. How do they get the number of flats and sharps that they have? How does this all get figured out? I think you need to know it just to understand music, and it's not as hard as you think. Thanks, this is perfect. All right, this is what we call the low C. It's halfway between the bass clef and the treble clef. I could have drawn these treble clef lines all the way across. I didn't do it because we wouldn't need to use it, but I certainly could have done that. So I start the treble clef with that low C, and that's where it would start anyway. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then it repeats, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I've done 2 octaves here. And so when I say you can do a lot of music with 1 or 2 octaves, you can, because the octaves repeat themselves. But where do the keys come from? This goes all to the bass clef, and this goes all to the treble clef. Well, I'm going to show you, I think I'm going to show you a keyboard. I first have to dig it out. Here we go. Here's a keyboard. Let me take this down for a minute, and let me put this keyboard up. This is This has all of the keys of a piano, believe it or not. Small keys, but they're all the keys of the piano. And then I want to show you, we won't show you the whole thing, but this is good. Okay, this is that low C that I just showed you. Now, in a scale, you have a series of steps and half steps. And if we can focus basically from here on up, because I don't need the bass clef, I just need the treble clef. Ah, thank you, that's very good. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. See, he's a genius. He doesn't know it, but he's a genius. When you take and do scales, you have a series of full steps and half steps. So let's say we start with C. C to D is one step. D to E is one step. E to F is one half step. Why? Because there's no black note here, so that's going to be a half step. If you wanted a full step, you'd have to go from this E to this F sharp, but we don't want a full step here because the pattern is 2 full steps and then the half step. Then F to G is a step, G to A is a step, A to B is a step, and B to C is another half step. So when we get and arrange our keys, starting, and I'm going to do this again, so to help you to remember it, C to D, one step, D to E, one step, E to F, one half step, and then F to G is one full step, G to A is one full step, A to B is one full step, B to C is a half step. So the pattern of full and half steps on scales is always the same for any of the major scales. We're not talking about augmented scales or diminished scales or any of the other unusual scales. We're dealing with major scales here. This is just, just a basic class. So the step pattern is step, step, half step, 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 half step. That's the pattern, and it's going to be that way for every key that you have. Supposing you want to get, and I've talked about this key of G, all right? If you any note that you start is the key that it's in. If I start in G, then that G is the root note, and it's called the G scale. If I was to start with this F, then this F would be, it's a little below here, then this F would be the root note, and it would have the same pattern, except you'd end up with a B flat as the one accidental in it. With this key, G, going back to G, what's going to happen is the F sharp is going to be the final note. All right, so I'm going to use the same pattern on the G. G to A, step. A to B, step. B to C, half step. That's what we want. C to D is step. D to E is step. Now, the third step is going to be from that B to the F sharp, because B to C would be a half step, but we need that third full step. So we have to go from B to F sharp to get it. And then that half step is going to be from that F sharp to the G. So we have the low and the high G. It goes according to this pattern, the same pattern as the C did. And I'll do this again. Step, G to A, step, A to B, step, and then that first half step is that B to C. C to D is a step, D to E is a step, and for that third step you have to get to the F sharp, because otherwise there's no black note there, so you have to go from that E to that F sharp, and then that final half step that you end on is that the F sharp to the G. And so you have that same pattern. And the reason the key of G has that one sharp in it, it has to be that F sharp, because you need to have that final step. And the only way you can have that third step is to go to that F sharp. That's why the key of G has one sharp in it. Every major scale is the same. Let's take D. That's well within our range right here. D to E now the key of D has two sharps in it, a C sharp and an F sharp. So if you're going to start on D, then the root note is D, and the scale is the key of D. D to E is a step, and you need another step. So how do you get it? E to that F sharp, because you can't use F. That's only a half a step. So you have E to that F sharp. That's your second step. Well, then where's your half step? It's from that F sharp to that G. That's a half step. And then G to A is your step. A to B is your step. The third step is going to be from that B to that C sharp. You can't do C because that's only a half a step, but you need that third step. So you're going to go from that B to that C sharp. That's your third step. And it also adds C sharp to the key signature. And then your last half step is going to be from that C sharp to that D. You see, you end on a half step. And I could go through any of the scales and I could come out the same. The reason that you get certain sharps and certain keys, and it's not necessarily the key that it's named in, is the fact that you follow that pattern. And to get the step, step, half step, 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 half step, you may have to go to sharps to get it, or flats to get it, to make sure that you get that step pattern the way it's supposed to be. And that's how come if you start on the key of G, you're going to always have that F sharp in the key signature. The only sharp, it has nothing to do with the fact, well, it has to do with the fact you started on the G, but it doesn't, the sharp isn't the G. You know, in the key of D, you have your two sharps. You have C sharp and then you have F sharp, but it has nothing to do with the fact that it's not called C sharp and it's not called F sharp. It's called the key of D. Whatever you know, whatever note you start on, you can make a scale out of it, and it always has to follow that pattern. If it's a major scale of step, step, half step, 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 half step. And because you're following that pattern, because it's a major scale, you may end up on some sharps that you didn't expect, maybe, but that's why the key of G has one sharp. That's why the key of D has two sharps. Well, what about F, the key of F? The key of F has one flat. F to G is a step. G to A is a step. Well, you need to have a half step. Where is that half step? It's going to be on that B, and that's a B flat. This is the B, so this is the B flat. That's your step. Then you see you go in one step, you step from B flat to C. That's a step. That's what you want. C to D step, D to E step, and then what's the half step? It's that E to F. And it ends on the note that you started it, but an octave higher. So it works for both flats and it works for sharps. And that's really very important to know that. So what's an easy way to know what key that you're in? I'll show you an easy way. There is something called a circle of fifths, and I think it's a little more complicated. I didn't bring it in today because I have a simpler way to teach you. If you say, okay, what key, how many flats, how many sharps in the key of G? Well, I know it's one sharp, but how would I figure it out if I didn't know? Well, supposing we start here again with that C. That C is all fired important because that's your halfway note between your bass clef to the left and your treble clef to the right. This is a full-scale piano in the sense that I have 88 keys. All right, so we start with C. C, and we go up 5 steps. And I'm just pretending that they're all full steps here. C, D, E, F, G. That's 5 steps, and you put a sharp there. That would be your first sharp. It would be the key of G, and it would be one sharp. So you start at G. You start in the same key that you left off. So I left off in key of G, so I'll start with G. G, A, B, C, D. Another 5 steps. All right, that's D. Add another sharp. You know, you keep the sharp that I had. I keep the G sharp. I add another sharp. The key of D has 2 sharps, and I've shown you that because I've shown you the progression of the step, step, and half steps of it. Now I do from D, D, B, C, G, A. A has 3 sharps. You add another sharp. You start on C, you go 5 steps, and then you add a sharp. Every 5 steps, you add another sharp. You keep the sharps that you had, you add 1 more. You start on the same note that you ended on. So let me repeat this and take it a little further. Key of C starts with C. That's the root note. I take it 5 keys up. C, D, E, F, G. 1 sharp, the key of G has 1 sharp, and I've shown you that before. Then I start on G, G, A, B, C, D. That D has 2 sharps. All right, I have the G and I add the 2nd sharp. Then D, E, F, G, A will have 3 sharps. The sharp will be a G. We don't usually play that on recorders. A, B, C, D, E, another 5. You add another sharp, you have 4 sharps. E, F, G, A, B, you have 5 sharps. So you can count 5 steps or 5 keys. I shouldn't call them steps because some of them are half steps, but it doesn't matter. It always works out. You go 5 keys and you add a sharp. Then you start the same key that you left off and you count 5 more, add another sharp. And then you count 5 more, add another sharp. You can go all the way up the keyboard and down the keyboard that way. So if somebody says, I'd like to play something and it's in the key of D, what you can do is say, let me see, C, D, E, F, G, 1 sharp, and G, A, B, C, D, 2 sharps. Okay, the key of D will be in 2 sharps. And you can tell that way. Now, there is something called the circle of fifths, and I wished I'd brought it in, but I didn't. But it has it all arranged according to a circle. And it's just the same thing I've told you, but it's arranged according to the circle. And it's called the circle of fifths, because every 5th key, you get another sharp. Or if you went down the keyboard, every 5th step would be another flat. So these are the flatted, and these are the treble clef with the sharps. Now, you don't have to start. If you're going to do something in the key of G, you don't have to start your music in the key of G. You can start your music wherever you want to. But if it's in the key of G, every time you get to the F sharp, every time you get to the F in the key of G, you'll sharp it. And it'll be in the key signature that way. And so you can look in the key signature, okay, F sharp, we're in the key of G. Okay, 2 sharps, we must be in the key of D. It all works out. See, music can be very mathematical, and it all works out according to a pattern. If you understand the pattern, then you understand how it works. Now, I'm going to take this off for a minute. I do my own charts, and I know they're not fancy, but it's very hard to find a company that'll do charts for you exactly that you want. Okay, here's a keyboard, and here's the C. And what I've done here is I have put the notes exactly where they're supposed to be. So you can see the notes on the staff, and you can see where they are on the keyboard. C, D, E, F, G, 1 sharp. G, A, B, C, D, 2 sharps. D, E, F, G, A, 3 sharps. Now, this is not a full, complete keyboard by any means, so I just want to give you the gist of it. All of this is going to be on the bass clef. This starts the treble clef. This is going to be on the bass clef. Now, I could very easily have just drawn those 5 lines all the way across and put the treble clef over here. I didn't do it because I wanted to write in bass clef there, but I could have done it. There's no reason why I would have to start right here, but I wouldn't have any notes on it. because if I did that, the notes would have to be higher and they would be treble clef notes. And I wanted to show the scale. What is a scale? It's when you play something, a series of notes, and you just go up and down. And those are the scales. Now, if you want to do, that's a diatonic scale. It just goes up and down, step by step by step, using the pattern of the half steps and the steps that I've showed you. It uses that pattern. A chromatic scale is a scale that uses half steps. Those are all half steps. And if I'm to point them out, if I started on a C, it would be C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and F, that half step. F sharp, G, A sharp, B, B sharp, C. And when I say you can play a lot of notes with just an octave, the octaves repeat themselves. From here to here is an octave, but this is another octave, the same notes but an octave higher, and it keeps repeating and repeating and repeating itself. If you were to start with A is 2 steps down from C, so this is the C. If you get 2 black notes, then the note to the left of that black note is always going to be a C. Now, if you take 2 white steps below that, that starts with an A, and if you can use the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then what happens? It reverts back to A again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What happens? It reverts back to A again. A to G, A to G, A to G. The difference is the octaves are going to be higher or they're going to be lower. But basically the same notes repeat themselves, octave after octave, octave after octave. And when I show you the full keyboard, there are 4 octaves of Cs from that C to the top of the piano. And there are 3 octaves below that middle C for the bass clef, plus 2 other notes in addition to that. So you end up with an 88-note keyboard. But it's all repeated. How come you go from the A and you can't go H, I, J, no note J, no note Z, no note T? Because we don't hear it. We can't hear it. When we get to that G, the next note we hear is the A, repeated at a higher level from this A down here. It's a case of what we can hear. Now, I truly believe that animals can hear more. Some animals can hear more, but the human ear can't do it. When the human ear gets to G, and the next note is always going to be an A, because that's what we hear. And that A is going to be exactly like that A, and it's going to be exactly like that A, except it's going to be in a higher octave. So, and I better watch my time because I'm getting out of it. All right, here comes a low D. That's an octave. I can't get it beyond the A. It goes back to the G because that's what we hear. So it's very precise. Music can be very precise as well as being very beautiful. Well, I should close it here. I've got a lot more music to share with you. We're still working on the intervals between the notes, and I'm still writing music for that. And I've written quite a bit of music for that already. So we'll continue, and I'll kind of get back to it, but I didn't want to just stay on the same thing too long because you might get bored with it, so I wanted to interject some extra things instead. So we'll get back to it next week. Please join me then.